And welcome to everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to guide you through this discussion, because I want to believe it's going to be interactive. And I will encourage all of us to use the chat box for all our questions that we can tackle during the Q&A. So our topic for today is on redefining your value proposition. And redefine because as business people, the assumption is that we already have our value propositions. So that is with the background of crisis management and business continuity. And as we all know, the current crisis right now is the COVID-19 pandemic. So it has, I don't want to dwell so much on this because these are things we're already experiencing, things that we already know. So the effects of the pandemic, economic downturn, loss of jobs, temporary closure of some industries like aviation, for example, closure of borders, travel restrictions, value chain interruptions. You know, the people who are bringing stuff from China, for example, are now not able to do that with ease. We have all these new public health laws that are shaping how we live and work, be it the masking, be it social distancing, sanitizing, etc. Then we have the new behaviors and habits that are being formed. And that is highlighted because it's what is going to form the basis of our discussion today. But before we go there, perhaps we can just have an overview of how businesses are coping at the moment, and probably how we're going to continue coping until the pandemic is over. So there's the cash preservation measures that everyone has initiated, and I guess all of us in our businesses are already doing one of these. I've just listed a few, but there could be many more. Renegotiating contracts, be it rental contracts, be it lease agreements, supplier contracts. If I was paying after 30 days, now I'm trying to renegotiate to pay after 60 days, etc. We have slashed payroll budgets. You know, people have lost their jobs. Others have had salary cuts, etc. Those who do not have to work in a physical location have given up their office spaces. The ones who hold stock are now holding very minimal inventory. New channels have been developed and will continue to be developed. Everyone has somehow relooked now their online presence. You know, we want to see how our websites are doing, our social media pages, etc. Then we have a cashless economy. All payments are done virtually, online delivery, etc. Then we also have diversification, where we are trying to fit our offering or grow it to the new needs of the client. For example, if Kerubo was only doing dresses, now she's able to incorporate masks into her offering. If someone was doing, say, office furniture, offices are no longer buying furniture, so they're able now to customize their offering to perhaps sell working stations for homes, designed for homes. So that could be, you know, a bit smaller than the ones in the office, etc. So that is what we mean by diversification. And for the few lucky ones, there's a government stimulus package. I say lucky because this is not incentivizing everyone. I suppose especially the small businesses have not benefited from this. If I'm not trading, then I don't think it's a VAT reduction helps me very much. If I don't have a lot of staff working for me, then the pay saving is very minimal for me. However, for the large corporates, I think it's a good package for them. So what are some of the new behaviors and habits that we are anticipating might stay with us, or, you know, will be formed and stay with us post-COVID? That is in the years to come. And I'm just highlighting a few things that I was thinking through, and perhaps we could have a discussion later about them after the presentation, and we could add more. So social distancing will become a way of life. Then we have limited gatherings, especially crowds. So if we might continue seeing people, you know, if I have a birthday party, I only want to invite the people I'm very comfortable with. So we will continue because of the skepticism of hygiene and safety. So we might continue seeing lesser crowds even in future. Then paranoia about the hygiene of people and products might continue and live with us. So for example, all consumers might require evidence of hygiene standards. So before I consume your product, I want to know how was it, what are the measures you took to ensure that the hygiene standards were actually maintained. Then contactless everything, meaning online shopping. Nowadays, we are just buying stuff from like websites, to Naivas, shop online. Then next, you have Glovo delivering stuff for you on your doorstep. Working from home, this might actually become the new future for us. After the cabin fever, I think initially people suffered, trying to adapt to working from home. But I think after that phase of trying to adapt, now people are able now to do that from home. It's giving them more flexibility to spend a bit of time with their children and their families, and still be able to accomplish work tasks. So work has become very output-based. So in future, we might see more companies moving to agile working environments, meaning, you can have a nursing mom come in 3 times a week, and then 2 days she can work from home, something like that, or flexi hours. Someone comes in at 9, leaves at 3, those kind of things. And then spending more time with nuclear family. So before we go too far, let's try and dissect this animal that we're calling the value proposition. And a value proposition is a statement. First of all, it's actually a statement that you derive from what the customer's need is, or the problem that they're trying to solve, or what the customer is trying to accomplish when they make a purchase, when they purchase your product or service. So for you to be able to derive the value proposition, perhaps you can ask that question of what is the customer trying to accomplish when they purchase my product or my service. So ideally, a value proposition is very much customer-based. It is not something we should try to derive intuitively. We might have an idea, but we should always bounce it back to the customer to validate it. If I say, for example, as Dade, I am thinking the reason why people come to me is because they want to set up maybe stable businesses. So that is what Dade, as the person giving the service, thinks. But is that what the consumer is buying? So you have to always bounce it back to the customer to validate if that is what their need is. So another way that you could ask that same question is, what job is the customer hiring my product or service to do for them? Meaning, I like using the example of hospitality industry because I think it's the easiest. If I walk into Java today to buy a cup of coffee, what am I hiring that cup of coffee to do for me? Or what am I hiring Java at that point to do for me? Java might assume that I just went for a cup of coffee, but the truth is perhaps I went for a meeting, the job was a meeting, or I went to work, maybe I just wanted to sit somewhere and finish up on some emails before I go home. So at that point, I've turned Java into an office. So the job to be done at that particular time is office space. Java is providing me office space. So for me, coffee is a by the way. I would if I did not have to do work, I would not have sat to have coffee. So that is what we mean by what job is the customer hiring your product or service to do for them. So perhaps maybe we can make a distinction because I know some people confuse value proposition and unique selling point. So your unique selling point is a marketing issue. That is what we call, in other words, competitive advantage. What edge do you have about your competition? So why should I purchase from company A and not company B? That is what we call a unique selling point. But a value proposition, on the other hand, is a strategy issue. It is what is it that the customer is buying. So that's the distinction between a value proposition and a unique selling point. So if I go into a movie theater today, what job is that movie theater doing for me? So it is the work of IMAX to figure out the people going for movies, just coming to socialize with their friends, or they were actually interested in watching a particular movie. There's a certain thing going on about this new movie and everyone now wants to watch it. So in that case, there's a certain social urge that I want to fulfill. So it's very important to get to the roots of what your customer is trying to do when they purchase your product or your service. So how does your value proposition fit into your business model? So this is just a very simplified version of a business model I just used for the purpose of this presentation. So on the left-hand side, we have the value proposition and the profit formula. Basically, the value proposition is what the customer is buying or what we are selling to them. And the profit formula is why we are selling to them, how are we making money. So I keep saying that a business exists only for two reasons. Number one, to create a customer, and number two, to make a profit. If you don't have those two, then you don't have a business. What you have is a charitable organization. You might have an offering to the client without a way of making money. So that's not a business. So those are the priorities of any business model: to crack the value proposition and the profit formula, and then go now and start figuring out, do we have the resources to be able to deliver our value proposition, and what processes do we need to establish to be able to nail that value proposition? Meaning, our resources are people, capital, technology, etc. So for example, if Ben Boro, if I can use East African digital marketers as an example. So if I walk into Ben's office today, and what I want Ben to do for me is help me attract website traffic. So the job is selling website, is actually creating website traffic for Daddy Consult. So in that regard, Ben's value proposition to me at that point is selling website traffic. He's not selling digital marketing. He has narrowed down to a specific job of doing what? Of selling website traffic. So that's his value proposition to me at that point. Then now he has to crack his profit formula when I enroll that day. So how do I ensure that I make money from this process? And then do I have the right resources to be able to help her build that traffic? Meaning, do I have perhaps skilled personnel? Do we have good internet in our office, etc.? And then on the processes, what do I need to do to ensure that we do a good job for that day? Meaning that are we able perhaps to create, say, good ads that she can be able to put out on her website or on the social media pages, those kind of things. So the processes are the repetitive tasks that you do in your business that help you now be able to perform the job that the customer requires you to do for them. So on the value proposition versus target market. So for all of us, our businesses start with an idea. That's the truth. Our businesses start with an idea. So let's say, for example, Susan wants to start a dog training center. She lives in Mombasa and has an idea to start a dog training center there. So Susan, most of us will, the steps that we follow is, Susan gets an idea. So she goes, reads about it, and gets knowledge of the technical aspect of the job, and then goes and creates a product, meaning she'll go register a business. She will now put it out there to the market. She'll do a website, flyers, distribute to people in malls, those kind of things. Go to Facebook and spam people with ads. So she has gotten an idea, built a product, and then sent it to the market. So Susan has skipped two very important points, which is after she got the idea, she did not sit down to craft her value proposition to the customer. So, and the value proposition is the only way that you're able to get you to your target market well. So Susan skipped the value proposition part and went straight to the product. And then now, instead of targeting her market right, she went and threw her product to the entire market of Mombasa. But if she had gone to actually validate that idea in the market to find out, is there actually need for dog training services in Mombasa? Perhaps she should have found out that opportunity is not in dog training, but would have been in selling puppies, for example. Just an example I'm using. And while she finds out that the opportunity is in selling puppies, then she's able to segment her market now to what the need is at that point. So do people need German Shepherds? Do people need Rottweilers or Bulldogs? I don't know any other type of dogs, but yeah. So what sort of job do they require me to do for them? The more I dig into this topic, the more I'm convinced that even segmentation should be done based on the job that we are doing for the customer. So if I am, for example, I am Anne Hazel and I'm selling meat, then I need to discuss to find out why people are buying, what job my meat is doing for them. So before I segment my market in terms of location, for example, say Kileleshwa, Lavington, and that's how we do our segmentation most of the time, Ruaka, like that. Then instead I'll be able to segment my clientele into the ones who buy the ram steaks, the ones who buy the pork, and that kind of thing. So we might be asking, then how are we supposed to build our value proposition? And it's a very simple thing to do, because it's not, your work is basically to interview the customer. It is your customer that will tell you what your value proposition should be. So I keep saying that customers hardly buy what we think they're buying, because we have crafted products based on what we think the customer needs, but we never actually interviewed our customers to discover if those needs exist. So it should be a very bottoms up approach. You start from the customer and coming up to be able to build that. So and when you're doing the interviewing of the customer, when you're trying to find out about the job they are trying to do, the first thing that you'll discover is the functional aspect of that job. For example, if I hire Royalscape Ventures, if I go to Kimari and I hire him to come and do landscaping for me, design my gardens, the functional aspect might be, I just want beautiful space, outdoor space at home. But if Kimari digs deeper into the social and the emotional aspect of that need, why does she need beautiful space, for example? He might discover that Dade requires beautiful space because it gives her peace of mind, for example. So that's an emotional aspect. He might discover that Dade likes hosting, so she wants gardens that will make her home look posh, those kind of things. That's a social aspect. So Kimari needs to factor not just the functional job that I'm giving him, but what is the emotion and the social aspect that is attached to that need. So and I think there are a couple of companies that have been able to craft this well. When we think of companies like Equity Bank, they've been able to create a certain notion or a certain image. Majority of us think of Equity and we think it's a bank that serves the low-income earners or the rural population. So that's what they were able to craft their value proposition to the customer and harness the emotional aspect of that need. And now they created a certain image, and that's how we look at Equity. But the truth, when you look at how they charge their transactions, there's nothing cheaper about Equity. So there's nothing preventing them from serving, say, a standard chartered customer for that matter. But it's a certain, they were able to craft to engage customers from an emotional perspective. If you think of Coca-Cola, I mean, sodas now, as much as we keep complaining, they're full of sugar, etc. I don't think there's any party you go to and there's no soda. Why? Because Coca-Cola is not selling to us the drink, they're selling to us the feeling that comes with that drink. So they are not selling, their value proposition is quenching our thirst. It's not about health issues. So as much as we keep complaining, we are also doing something different. So they're listening to what we are doing, not what we are saying. So we need to take into consideration the social and the emotional aspect of the jobs the customers are trying to fulfill when they hire our services. What are the type of questions that we can ask during that period when we are interviewing our customers? So in the past, we've collected a lot of correlational data. And not just in the past, even presently, what happens is any data we collect is on the descriptive side of your customer, like how do they look like? Are they tall? Are they short? Are they male? Are they female? What age group are they in? Where do they live? Can they refer to someone else? If you're in B2B, business to business, then you're trying to find out what industry do they operate in, what sort of size of organization are they. So those are the kind of things that the kind of data that we have been collecting and keep collecting from our customers. And that data only describes the customer for us. And it is important for us to actually have that data, but it does not tell us the driver behind the purchase. So that now, if I bought, say, Fountain of Life, if Dade is a consumer of Fountain of Life, she's female, she's between 28 and 35, she lives in Nairobi, she's likely to refer Lucy to someone else. So But that doesn't tell Lucy why Daddy bought Fountain of Life. So until Lucy discovers the job that Fountain of Life is doing for Daddy, that's the only way she's able to sell more. She might go to the market and she might think that Daddy is a certain age. So perhaps her age has anything to do with why she bought, but that's not accurate. Why she bought perhaps could be maybe she has high blood pressure and is trying to use Fountain of Life to control that. So until Lucy is able to get to the bottom of why Daddy bought, what job was Daddy hiring Fountain of Life to do for her? Is she having hot flashes? Is she having, does she have people in her family who've died of cancer? So she's trying to cure a certain fear that she has. So those kind of things. So perhaps the questions we should incorporate in our interviews with customers, or the data we should be trying to collect from our customers, is what are the circumstances they were in when they made a purchase? So I might walk into Kerry Fashions today and buy some ready-made dress, but perhaps the reason I bought, the circumstance I was in at that point was my dress got ripped off, maybe when I was shopping at Naivas, and I couldn't go wherever I was going, and I needed to fix it or get a new outfit altogether. So if Kerubo does not understand the circumstances I was in when I was making that purchase, she might assume that I just had a budget for a dress, which is not accurate. So the same question that is still being asked in a different way. What were they trying to accomplish when they bought their product or service? And while they were buying, did they have to make any trade-off? So what you're trying to discover is my offering giving a complete solution for the need that the client has at that point? So those are some of the questions I was thinking about that we can be able to ask our customers. So the question for today, or what we are trying to ask ourselves, is, given those needs that we spoke about, if we go back to these behaviors, and given the behaviors and the habits that we are anticipating will stay with us post-COVID, are the needs of our customers likely to change? So if I get used to working from home, do my needs now change? Do I still need Java for a meeting place or for an office space for that matter? So do those needs change? Is the job still the same as the existing one? So that's our question for today and what we are trying to answer. Hence why we were saying the true, what we're trying to do is to redefine. So we are assuming as business owners and entrepreneurs who have been in business for a while, we already have a value proposition. And if we do not, please work backwards with reach out to a few customers and find out why they have been buying, what they have been buying, and what appeals to them about your product or your service. Those kind of, try and do it before you move to this stage of anticipating how those needs will look in future. So you must have a starting point of knowing this is what the customer's need is, so that now you're able to look at the mutated needs after COVID. So it will be hard for you to think of how those needs will look like when you don't know how they look like today. So you need to first start there if you don't have that statement, that value proposition statement written down for you. So if yes, perhaps your the needs of your customers have changed, then you want to ask yourself, how do those needs look like? For example, if I am, say, Empire, for example, and my value proposition to my customers was, we provide decent corporate lunches affordably and great ambience. Let's assume that's Wanjiro's value proposition to her customers. But the same customer now has been allowed by the employer to work from home, or has flexi time, maybe comes into the office at 9 and leaves at 3. Hence, they don't see the need to have a 1-hour lunch break, because that's time they could use to work. So in between lunch, they will grab a cup of tea in the office and continue working. So this customer has eliminated the need for lunch. There are few who will also be skeptical about going for lunch with their colleagues, because They're not trusting that their colleagues are exercising the same safety measures that they are exercising themselves. So in the office, perhaps even their sitting arrangement has changed. They are a bit further apart from each other, or they have those cubicles that are being installed by offices so that now you look like you're in your own private space. So there is now limited trust even with the people you're working with. Or perhaps if we are doing flexi time, I work on Monday, my lunch buddy who we used to go for lunch with works on Tuesday. So I no longer have someone to go for lunch with. So what has happened is I have eliminated need to go for lunch at Wanjiro's restaurant. However, I'm not skeptical about my spouse, for example. I'm not skeptical about my children or the people close to me. I'm comfortable hanging out with them. So new needs emerge now that instead of having when we eliminate the corporate lunch need, perhaps a family dining need comes up. So now Wanjiru realizes that the new business or the new needs that have arisen for the new opportunity for her is in family dining. So she wants to go a step further and ask herself, is the current model that she has at Empire fit to meet those new needs? So for example, does the sitting arrangement we have in Empire, is it fit to serve a family setup, for example? Is the menu that we have fit for a family setup? So if people are not coming for dinner, then perhaps I need to move my coffee machine to the back because people are no longer coming for coffee. Even those who do it is because it was after a meal. So I'm not selling more of the coffee, it is now more of wine during dinner. So perhaps I should move the coffee machine and replace it with a full rack of wines, select wines from different places. So those kind of things. So she needs to know whether her model can realistically accommodate that new opportunity. In most instances, when new opportunities arise, you'll find that the business model is too solid or is too rigid to change, that it's not possible for you to incorporate a new business. So there are a few lucky ones, maybe perhaps like Wanjiru, who might be tweak her business model to fit those new needs. But say an example could be who? I'm just using hypothetical scenarios. I'm not saying that this is what is happening. If we take someone like Brian, Pristine, say Pristine Linen and Laundry, they offer commercial laundry services. But now with the lack of, with the lost trust in hygiene standards and people being more skeptical about it, maybe Brian's customers, who are other businesses, hotels, serviced apartments, now prefer to have their laundry done in-house. They prefer to manage their own laundry process just to ensure that there are no lapses in hygiene. So they have almost now eliminated that need for Brian's commercial service laundry. However, Brian might discover if these people are going to say now run their own commercial laundries, are going to be managing the laundry for themselves, then they need commercial laundry detergents. And then he finds out that he needs an opportunity, there's an opportunity now in detergents for laundry, for commercial laundry. So he goes out and starts now creating, the value proposition, the business, the profits, whatever that we're talking about. But when he looks at his current business model of commercial laundry, it cannot realistically be able to accommodate the new opportunity that he has found out. So if it's the profit formula, for example, whatever his revenue model was, cannot work now for the new kind of business. So in most instances, you'll find that when new opportunities arise, people try to craft, or it's advisable that you craft a different business unit alongside what you are doing. So that's just an example that I just thought through. So for some people, the need or the job that the customer requires you to do might not change. However, their behavior might change, or habits might, there could be new habits and behaviors, but the fundamental job might remain. Think of an example of Kelakeli. He designs office spaces. So if Kelakeli, the job hasn't changed. When I hire pieces of Kelakeli, I want him to come and do interior design of my office premises. So the job hasn't changed from what he was doing before, but now with the new behaviors of social distancing, etc., I might require him now to instead of doing an office plan sort of office, I want him to do cubicles instead. Instead of having switches in an office that everyone has to touch, I want people to walk into the office and lights come out. When you walk out, lights go off. Instead of, say, having like if we talk of security, for example, instead of employees using their thumbprint to log in, now they might prefer to use face recognition systems, so that to just reduce the, the touch, the physical touch. So those are the kind of behaviors or new habits that might be formed that might now influence David Kang'ethe on the, to add a few more things to his offering, but still serving the same need. And I was just thinking through how we as BNI members can help each other. And first and foremost, we are consumers of each other's product. So if we go back a few, when you're talking about the value proposition and the questions we should be asking, we have also a starting point in BNI, because as consumers of each other's product, we can answer those questions. I can be able to tell Hesbon, I'm hiring lemon and ginger honey to do this for me. Hesbon might think perhaps Dade is using lemon and ginger honey to fight COVID, to ensure that, I don't know whether it's a myth or it's true, that her throat is COVID-free because I have taken lemon and ginger. However, he might discover that Dade uses lemon and ginger honey as her first drink of the morning because she feels it opens up her vocals, etc. So, those are questions. We can help each other answer those questions as to why, what we're trying to accomplish when we buy those products. And then majority of us don't have boards. So we can start by forming board of advisors comprising of our own members. So you can choose people who you feel are experts in where you lack. For example, if you're not very good with, say, accounting, you can have Kevin on your board. Then he can be able to advise you on accounting matters. If you're not very good with development of strategy, maybe you might have Dade. If you're not very good at another technical aspect, then you get someone who is very good at it. So because we are a community of networkers and our philosophy is give us gain, I think this would be very beneficial when we do this, reciprocate this for each other. And then we can also use our power teams to help us craft our value propositions and consequently the target market. So for me, I believe target market has to come from value proposition. And like just using the descriptive things that you were saying, my target market is an SME who has employees between 10 to 100, has revenue between this and this. That's descriptive. But when I narrow down to the job to be done, customers come to me for two jobs. Number one, profit maximization, or number two, ensuring business continuity. So if those are the jobs to be done, it doesn't matter whether the customer has 10 employees or 100. The formula that I'm going to use to help them is the same. So if I categorize my customers based on the job I'm doing for them, then I'll be knowing that I have people who come to set up systems and structures. I have people who come to, say, learn financial management. That's a job to be done at that point. So instead of perhaps doing it like how I used to do it before, like cluster my customers, say, in industries and say, I have my customers, I have this segment that is in agribusiness, I have another segment that is in construction, for example. But when I dig deeper into that segment in construction, I find out I have Sandix that requires financial planning training. I have Royalscapes that requires a strategy session. So the job to be done for the people in that segment is so different. And so the dynamics change in that segment. However, if I went and now categorized all my customers and said, the job to be done is strategy. And whether you're in construction, whether you are in health and wellness, whether you're in agribusiness, if the job to be done is the same, then fundamentally, the tools that I developed to help you are the same. So that's what I mean by using your value proposition to do your target market. And I think that's it for today. I think the aim was just to give us a driver, or to just guide us into a different way of thinking through our value proposition and how it will look like post-COVID. And maybe we can move to the Q&A. Susan? So you please use the chat box.
Okay, so just to guide everyone on how they can use the chat box, at the bottom of your screen, you're going to see a selection called Q&A. When you click on it, you'll be able to write your question, and the panelists will be able to read it and get it answered by our speaker. So we have one from Engineer Chebi, and he says that he's in the construction industry where they're facing serious challenges having site meetings on Zoom, and it has really compromised quality verification. So I guess, Chebi, you're trying to ask what other options are there and how you can be assisted to achieve quality verification with minimum contact for the industry that you're in.
Okay.
If you have ideas about that.
Well, if I could look at Chebi's situation, I think we need to also appreciate as things are changing, perhaps there are industries that still have to have physical sort of meetings, if I could say that. So, and if quality has become an issue in doing site meetings, because perhaps honestly, I don't think a camera can be able to capture the details of how a pipe has been done, for example. So I think they should still do their site meetings as usual with the other measures put in place, you know, the social distancing, the masking. Perhaps Chebi should engage David Kanyede on PPE, just to make sure that people, his customers and his employees feel safe when they go for site meetings. So I think for him, it's more an issue of implementing the guidelines by MOH than trying to, you know, to lower quality. If the process of online meetings is lowering his quality, he should stick to his old way of doing site meetings, taking into consideration the MOH guidelines.
Okay, great. Hopefully your question has been answered, Chebi. So we have another one from Ben Boro, and he says, on the interview phase, to better understand our customer needs, how do you suggest we conduct it? As not everyone is open to give you extra details about their needs. Some just need you to solve them.
That's a very good question from Ben. And well, the truth is, you see, unlike the generic information that we collect about demographics, that is, you know, the age, the location, etc., which we ask in our surveys. When I go to Java, they always send me that message. How likely are you to refer us to someone, or rating, those kind of things. Those very generic and require very little or minimal time for you to be able to get that information from customers. However, for you to do the needs analysis, you need to be very deliberate on who you ask. So the best starting point is people who are repetitive customers, people who buy from you frequently. So in that case, it's more interactive, and you need to inform your customer in advance that, you know, I'm trying to find out ABCD, and do you mind if we have a 10-minute session that I can make a phone call and we discuss about it. So go to your best customers. Don't go to the ones who are probably just recently enrolled. Go to the customers who have been your clients for a while and you know, would be a bit more comfortable talking to you. Also start in BNI. I believe if you have members in BNI who have consumed your services, they should also be able to help you know why they bought and what value, and then you'll be able to craft your value proposition from that. So the value proposition, you might find different jobs that the client is buying for. So what you need to do is, once you have interviewed people, then you find 7 out of 10, there's something that they have in similar, there's an answer I'm getting from majority of them, then you know that might be the main reason why that 70% of my customers buy my services because of website traffic. Another 30% perhaps buy because of Facebook ads. So that kind of thing. So the jobs might be different, or the needs might be different, but you want to pick the ones that are outstanding, the ones that are, you know, that are repetitive across many different people.
All right, thank you. And he also goes on to add, do you think we should first do a market research and survey before launching any new product to first understand if what we have in mind is what the market needs?
Yes, definitely. So a market research is, so we've already thought of the product. So we have the idea and we've thought about the product. And then now we are going to the market to find out if that need exists, right? So that is a process that we are calling. In fact, it's perhaps just different terminology of validating the needs of the customer. So you might go and find, if I want to roll out, like what you were saying, the dog services, the dog training center, we might go and find that there's nobody who is willing to spend on dog training. So whereas they're happy owning dogs, they don't want to go and train dogs, or they want to have a trainer come home or something, or they want to buy puppies that are already trained, those kind of things. So you go and discover first if there's a market and what the market needs, and whether that need is big enough for the customer to want to pay for it or to want to eliminate it. So yes, by all means, we should always make it a habit of doing a market study before we launch a new product. And also when we design the product, after we've done the market research, we've designed the product, do something called prototyping. That is, don't just, if say I was thinking of doing farming and I have 10 acres and I have validated and known that the market needs onions, don't go and plant 10 acres of onions. First, do a trial with an acre first and disseminate it to the market and actually find out that that formula, the profit formula you developed, actually works. And then now you can replicate that to the 10 acres. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Maggie. Now, I'm curious to ask that we have now various opportunities coming up, especially with the pandemic, and we've seen people moving into various businesses, especially in regards to PPE and dry food supplies. Is this an area we would still advise to do your follow the protocol of market research and that due diligence process, or is it something that you just jump on the bandwagon and hope to cash out at the end of it?
So that's a good. So the question is whether with the rather obvious needs of PPE and stuff like that, whether you still need to carry out a market research.
Yes.
Okay. So first and foremost, I think there's what we call, they're what we like now, the needs are a bit obvious. Like the guidelines are, you must wear a mask. I might not need a mask. I might not want to wear a mask, but the government requires me to wear a mask. So that is a need imposed by regulation, for example. So I think the question is not an issue of, it has almost been validated for you by being made legislation. But when we go to now where you're operating, perhaps I'm operating in Kitengela. So the question should be, what sort of mask should I develop for that, for the market that I want to supply? So you'll still need to go and find out, is the market in Kitengela for masks for 50 shillings, or is it for masks for 200 shillings? So there's still an aspect of the offering that you need to give that you need to take into consideration. So yes, to some extent, your need has been validated, but when you break it down, what do they actually need specifically? Is it the cheap ones, or is it the more sophisticated ones? So there's still an aspect of trying to go to the market to find out. And maybe we are thinking it's a complicated process when we call it market research and survey. It might sound a bit too research-ish, but it's a very simple process. It's basically interviewing the people who you think are your prospective customers. It's basically that. So when I decide to pick 10 people in Kitengela Mall, that's already market research. When I get my responses from 10 people, if I think that's a good, what do we call it in statistics? When I think that is a sample representative of the population, then that's enough market research.
Okay, so we'll take the last 3 questions from Julia, Saramboya, and Elizabeth. So Julia asks, how do you balance between what your customer thinks they need and what you as an expert in your field know are their real needs?
Wow, that's an interesting question. How do you balance between what your customer thinks they need and what you as the expert in your field know are their real needs? Well, the customer should not think they need something. They should know they need something. For example, when I'll tell you what, I don't know if this is I'm allowed to use this example. So if I go to Sanix, and Sanix needs me to do for them a financial plan for the year, perhaps. And I walk into Sanix, and as I'm doing so that is what Sanix thinks they need. But as I'm doing my diagnosis of the processes, the systems, and the kind of their numbers they've been turning over in the last couple of years, I go and discover that there are fundamental flaws in their system already. So I've discovered what they truly need at that point versus what they thought they actually needed. So as long as the customer can see value in what you're advising is the need that you as the expert in that field have identified, and you see it's not based on also what I think, it is based on a process of discovery. I have come and these are the facts on the table. This is ABCD, this is what has been happening. Hence why I think I know that you need ABCD and not, even before you go to your financial plan, you need to do 1, 2, 3. So I think it's really a communication language, because majority of people, if I develop Fountain of Life, and for me, I'm convinced that that is what my customer needs, I don't want another expert like Dade who does strategy to come and tell me this is not what your customer needs to my face. I have to craft a communication language that is acceptable to Lucy to say Fountain of Life is not serving the needs of your customer, but perhaps if you craft it like this, it might. So for me, I think it's more of a communication issue where people find value, they'll be comfortable adjusting to the new needs. And in most situations, you'll find the customer thinks, I need to do, for example, what? I'm trying to think of an easy service to use. Maybe I'm thinking, I need to buy sandals for a certain function. Maybe I'm going for a wedding and I want to buy sandals. So I walk into Backyard Shoes, and when I go there and I show them the picture of my outfit, they tell me, no, we think you need a block here. So if Backyard convinces me of, they speak to the emotional part, to the social aspect of why that outfit will go well with a block heel versus, and not with with an open shoe, then with sandals, that is, then I'm more convinced to buy from, to readjust my need. So I think it's a psychological thing. So it's about the communication language, if you ask me.
Okay, great. So we have another one from Sarah and Elizabeth, and I'd say they're intertwined in one. So if you interview your customers and you find the reasons that they buy your product or services are all very different and very many, what do you do then? And Elizabeth goes on to ask, customer needs are very dynamic. What are the recommended market research intervals?
Okay, so I can probably start with Sarah. So when you interview and you find that the customer buys for different reasons. So she's giving a scenario of maybe where the needs have no congruence. They're not converging anywhere. Everyone is buying for different reasons. So I think that it's more on how the customer is communicating how they, why they buy. Or perhaps if I interview 10 people, and in my opinion, those 10 people, from the responses I've gotten, they are all buying for different reasons. I should maybe extend my research or my interview to another set of 10 to find out if they also buy for different reasons. Because at some point you will find congruence. At some point you'll find, or even a word that everyone uses. If say now sells, has customers who buy fire insurance, and those customers who buy fire insurance, when she asks them why they buy, they're trying to secure, they're trying to protect themselves against loss. So, and then another person might put it across as, it is. So one might say, I'm trying to protect myself against loss. Another one is saying, I'm trying to ensure to protect myself against fire or damage. Another one might say, I have spent so much money on this project, I can't imagine losing my investment. So they'll give different responses. So the language might be different, but what everyone is telling you is one thing, which is safety. So they all want to safeguard their money and their investments. That is what they're ideally trying to put across, but in different words. So perhaps when you sit with someone who they're like, for example, me, and my work is to analyze value propositions or help people craft them, you'll be able to decode that language to narrow down to the message that everyone is giving you. For me, I believe that at some point you'll find congruence. It can't be that 20 people are all buying for different reasons. You'll find even a word, just one phrase that everybody keeps using. Maybe someone sells furniture and someone keeps saying upholstery, and that keeps popping in all the conversations. Then you want to understand how does that fit into that. But more often than not, I don't think customers will be buying for very different reasons. They might just be communicating it in different reasons. So when it comes to the dynamics of customer needs, it's true that they're different and they can be diverse. So what market research intervals? What are the recommended market research intervals? So why we advocate for you to do the research in the beginning when you're trying to craft the value proposition. Ideally, our businesses should start there, like when you're trying to validate your idea. Because what happens when your business model is more solid and developed, say for example, Brian's model today is commercial laundry, then it becomes very hard later for Brian to start rethinking what his customer needs. So he needs to craft it right from the beginning so that now everything he does, how the business model progresses from there is about now innovation into his industry. And then number two, he goes now to efficiencies of his model. So he goes now from thinking more towards the customer's needs, and he's moving to more towards the shareholders' return. So in the beginning, when we are crafting the business, we are always thinking about the customer, and what we are offering. But as we move along the curve, then it becomes more towards what return we are giving the investors in that business. So the focus shifts from the customer. However, after maybe the business model has matured and reached a certain level, and you start noticing decline in sales and stuff like that, then that might be a good point to start revisiting the customer need. Is what we are offering still relevant to the customer, or have those needs mutated? Is there a new opportunity in that setup? And then again, when you discover there's an opportunity, come back and try and fit it into your existing model. If it can't, create it as a separate business unit altogether. So I think market research should be done at the beginning, and perhaps later after your model has matured.
Okay, thank you, Daddy. So we still have 3 more questions. Are you willing to take them on?
Wow, I don't know what time limit we have. Maybe we can go up to 8:15.
Okay, great. So Samuel Getao asks on behalf of Wanjiru Mambo, do you think it's a good time to venture into new businesses or to diversify?
Or do you think it's a good time to venture into new businesses or to diversify? During this pandemic, no. I think we should all be trying to survive, to ensure that we are surviving. And this discussion was redefining post-COVID. So what we should be doing now is planning, but the real investment is not now. It is after we have conquered this pandemic. And now that's the time we should, if you're going into diversification, if you're trying to do new investments, it should be after. Because the truth is, we don't know how the economy is going to be between now and when we recover from COVID. There might be, ups and downs, ups and downs. Sometimes we're given hope when things seem to be stabilizing, then perhaps there's a new wave. So maybe until we have a vaccine for this thing, we might see that yo-yo in the economy. So I think until we are certain, we are free from the COVID, I don't think we should be risking putting money in new ventures.
Okay, so in the line of new ventures, I'm going to take on Susan Ndongobab's question. Now that the pandemic is here and we have seen the adverse effects it's had on our businesses, what would be your advice to entrepreneurs going forward so we are prepared for such and also be in a position to structure our products and services to handle unexpected occurrences?
That's the aspect of business continuity, which I keep singing about all the time. How ready is your business for even smaller crises? Sometimes even think of our BNI meeting. If I suddenly lost power in my house and I don't have internet, then what happens to that meeting? Have I created a process as the president to know that that meeting will still continue with or without me? So those are the same, it's the same logic for our businesses as well. So have we created those safeguard measures? Like now perhaps we might not have thought about extreme things like a pandemic, but did we have even any sort of crisis management measures in place, and was that communicated to our employees? So I think this is a good time for a business, for someone like Susan Babs, to start rethinking their processes and setting down, writing down explicitly what their crisis management policy or their crisis management strategy is. So I think maybe what I can say is it's something that you can sit with an expert to help you, someone who is a business continuity expert. They'll help you craft the processes and the procedures and craft different scenarios of what can happen so that you're able to anticipate what you need to put in place.
Okay, thank you. Dade, I see so many referrals for you, for Elizabeth Jao and Antoinette and Maxi. So Susan Babs, these are the people you need to see. So on to our very last questions. Guys, if you have any questions, I think we can proceed to ask Dade on the group so we can limit our time. So Brian Gashero asks, are there any significant differences in determining value proposition in B2B or B2C context or vice versa, or is the process the same?
I would say the process is the same, whether you're in B2C or B2B. The fundamental is you need to find out what the job is. Whether it is an industry, a business that has hired you, what are they hiring your services to do for them? So the fundamental question is the same. What job is the customer, in this case, an individual, a consumer or another business, what are they hiring your services to do for them? So I think for me, I would say the process is the same.
Okay, thank you, Dade.
Yeah.
So do you have a closing cutting shot for us?
Well, I think I can end this with a quote that says, your customers are the judge, jury, and executioner of your value proposition. They will be merciless if you don't find fit. So in short, if your customers find they don't need what you're offering, so don't create products that only you are passionate about, nobody else needs. That because you are a health freak, now you go and create a moringa flour, yet nobody needs or nobody wants to buy moringa flour. So you need to find fit between your customer and the value proposition you're giving to them. And if you don't, your customers are going to be merciless. So I'd like to thank all of us for waking up early and attending Unfortunately, those who didn't register yesterday have not been able to log on. I think there's that when the webinar starts, you can't be able to register. So, but thank you everyone who registered and attended, and thank you for engaging me on the Q&A. We can continue the discussion on the WhatsApp chat. I also rolled out a business coaching class, which I can share the flyer with you guys for those who'd like to take up personalized advisory or would want to go through this process with someone who perhaps understands it better. But yeah, thank you all for giving me this opportunity. And I hope it was useful. Also, please give me feedback on my own performance, how you can rate the training, how it went. I thought I had a poll, but I can't see it now. But yeah, feel free to inbox me on the feedback.
Great. So thank you, Dade. Thank you very much. It was very intense and very eye-opening, and it gives us hope even as we process through this period. We do have some feedback, very positive feedback on the chat. Thank you everyone for flowing in. I have also posted a feedback form on the main WhatsApp group. Take your time to give us feedback so we can know how better to structure these trainings and for the day's own use as well. So I'd like to recognize the two visitors we have with us today. Lilian Gashoki, thank you for taking your time to attend. And Julius Matiru, thank you for taking your time as well. We hope you have learned a thing or two that you can bring to your chapters. Also passing vote of thanks to Samuel Getao for the always amazing artwork that he does for Nyota. And for Mumo, he's one of our admin managers in these training sessions. Of course, to BNI Kenya for the platform. To myself on behalf of Lux and the events and training coordination for Nyota chapter. And a much big thank you to the speaking panelists, starting with today's Dade. Margaret, Kinyanjui, thank you so much. And the list, you guys are selfless. Usually this is a charge service, but you're doing it hashtag for members by members, yeah? So Nyota members, remember, if you're inviting visitors, I think it's better to do due diligence with the speaker and with the LT and the events and training team, so that we do not offend any of our speakers. They are doing this free of charge, and they're doing it as they will do to a client with no limitations. So remember to fill in the feedback form so we can get feedback from you. And from our end, it's until next Tuesday, next training Tuesday. See you then. Thank you.